Sean, who's in bigger trouble? The New York Rangers or the Colorado Avalanche? And the Rangers, by the way, lead the series. The Avalanche are down 3-1. Who's in bigger trouble, Sean?
The Rangers.
Oh, come on. You can't say that.
Why can't I say that?
Say that. No.
But they're expected to lose the series.
Are they?
Who's the favorite?
Expected? Dallas is the favorite. I don't think you can necessarily say that Colorado's expected to lose the series. I wouldn't say that. I think, listen, the Rangers did not look good in Game 5. They lose 4-1. They had a 3-0 lead in the series. It's now 3-2. They still got 2 more cracks at this, Sean. The Colorado Avalanche have to win 3 games in a row against the team that's just beaten them 3 times in a row. And they've scored 5 goals in those games. And they just lost their leading goal scorer. I think it's got to be the Avalanche. I asked the question in jest. I wasn't expecting the Rangers as the answer.
The Avalanche are without Val Nichushkin. They're without Devin Tays last night. And maybe again. They're playing the best team in the West. I mean, I didn't expect it to be 3-1, but I picked Colorado. Colorado's that team. They've become the San Jose Sharks for me. I pick them and I pick them and I pick them, and then I give up on them, and then they play well, and I'm like, oh, I learned my lesson. I'm going to pick them again, and now here we are. I think maybe this is who the Colorado Avalanche are. Alexander Georgiev was good last night, but he's not a difference maker for them, and I think the depth of the Dallas Stars is starting to really show through. They're a much better team than I thought they were.
Yeah, listen, there's no question. The difference, obviously, between Colorado and San Jose is Colorado won the Stanley Cup. San Jose could never get over that hump. But I see your point. And actually, our guest today, Mike Zeisberger, we welcome Mike back onto the podcast. We're so happy to have him back working in hockey again, covering for us at NHL.com. Healthy, most important. He joins us. He actually touched on that with the Dallas Stars and their depth. We talk all Toronto Maple Leafs with him as well, a little bit on the Edmonton-Vancouver series that he's covering. So that's coming up shortly. But yeah, no, the Dallas Stars, I picked them to win the Stanley Cup, and obviously after 2 games against the Vegas Golden Knights, I wasn't feeling it, but I stuck with it. They've stuck with it, and I think listen, Wyatt Johnston's been a great story. Scores a shorthanded goal, scores a power play goal in Game 4. But Miro Heiskanen has been a better defenseman in this series than Cale Makar, right? I mean, Tyler Sagan's got 3 goals. Logan Stankoven, they bring him in, 2 goals, right? Sam Steele comes in at the trade deadline, 3 points. Jake Ottinger has been really good. But the depth of this team, you're getting production out of the depth of this team and out of the top guys on this team. I'm talking Dallas. It's made a huge difference, obviously, in this series. And the other thing about it is, and it's a little bit happening in our series as well that we're covering, the Carolina Rangers series. But Sean, 3-1, Dallas is up in this series, and they have outscored in the past 3 games. They've outscored the Colorado Avalanche on special teams 5-0. 2 of those are shorthanded goals, which we know, well, didn't happen for the Rangers in Game 5 as a dagger, but we know can be daggers.
They're outplaying them in a lot of areas. And you wonder, look, losing Nichushkin is a blow. The guy had goals in 7 straight games to start the playoffs, right? And now he goes back into the player assistance program. He left the team last year during the playoffs. That's a lot of drama to deal with. And you wonder how much it's impacted them in the last couple of days. It seemed to take a lot of people by surprise, when it happened right before the game, that morning before Game 4. But you wonder what kind of mental gymnastics were going on behind the scenes. And then, like I said, Cale Makar gets all of the pub, but Devin Tays is a pretty good defenseman. So I just, I wonder how much of it's on the ice and how much of it's off the ice. And, but I think you're right. I think the depth of the Dallas Stars has given teams fits and is going to continue to give the Colorado Avalanche fits, because even at home they couldn't get the matchups they wanted.
Right. And that wasn't the thing we talked all season long about with the Avalanche too, right? Was just a little bit of a question on their depth. They filled some of it. They filled some of it out with some of the trade deadline acquisitions. Sean Walker, Zach Parise, they signed him. They get Casey Middlestat to fill out more depth down the middle. But it was a question for them all season. There was no question about Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen. We know that, but the question was depth and goaltending. But those are the two things that the Dallas Stars we knew had going into this series. They didn't have Nathan McKinnon. They didn't have Mikko Rantanen. But they had Jake Ottinger, and they had a lot of forwards and defensemen who can get the job done. And that's how it's playing out right now. And to your point on Nichushkin, I 100% agree. I think it. Listen, I thought Jared Bednar's comments after the game were very good, diplomatic, obviously, talking about Nichushkin as a person, wanting the best for him, hoping he can solve some of these issues that he has. But clearly the team, the impact on them, it had to have an impact on the team. You can't separate it when you're in the middle of this right now. It comes at also the worst time, and I don't mean to be cavalier about what's going on with Nichushkin, obviously. For the Avalanche, it comes at a worse time because they're down 2-1 in the series as this happens, and then they look a little frozen, in game 4, and they lose 5-1. Can they get it back, Sean? Yeah, they can get it back because this team has so much talent. If the talent's going, I mean, heck, you saw it in game 1, right? They were down 4-0, and then they scored 3 goals, and it was all of a sudden it was a game, right? And they scored them pretty quick. So they have that quick strike ability. They have the ability to get it back, but I just don't see it. Whereas you flip to the other series that we mentioned, the Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes, I do see it from the Rangers. Like, I think they can get it back. They played a bad game. One bad game. They were not bad in game 4. It was even, and Brady Shea scored a power play goal at the end to win. The Rangers have that ability, I think, to get it back. Plus, they have an extra crack at it here. Whereas I just don't see the Avalanche being able to get it back in enough to come back in this series.
Yeah, the Rangers have an extra crack at it. And if they don't do it, the noose gets a little bit tighter.
The noose is tight now, I think.
This is a team that blew a 2-0 lead to the New Jersey Devils last year. A Devils team that was nothing.
They were better than them. They were better than the Rangers all season long. They were.
There were a bunch of young kids who didn't know any better. That's what they were. And what did they become? They became a non-playoff team, right? And what did they become after they played the Rangers? They got waxed by this Carolina team. So you change coaches, but you keep the core. Do you start to wonder? It's not the coach. I got a different coach. I won the President's Trophy. Is the moment too big?
Well, we're not going to know. We're going to find out Thursday night.
Yeah,
that's when we're going to know.
But you're asking me who I think's in more trouble, and that's why I think it, because I think in that room, it's harder when you're the one being hunted. Right? The Colorado Avalanche right now are like, whatever. Dude, we're down 3-1. We're screwed. We know we can do it. Nobody else does. Screw the world. Here we come. That's what the Carolina Hurricanes have done for the last 2 games. Oh, everybody's put the toe tag on us. I guess we'll just go out and play. Now they've gone out and played, and all their leaders have stepped up. You look at the game last night, you look at that third period, and there's championship pedigree all over it. Jordan Staal scores the goal that gets them going. Jake Gensel flying all over the ice, Stanley Cup ring. Orlov makes the pass to Staal to get them going, Stanley Cup ring. Kuznetsov scores for the second straight game after being benched, Stanley Cup ring. Like, their veterans, and not even their veterans, their winners came out and did what needed to be done. And now they're still in that position. Well, it's only 3-2. Only 4 teams have ever done this out of 209. Who are we? We're just trying to extend our season one day, blah, blah, blah. But the Rangers, this is a legacy thing now. You don't figure a way out of this tailspin, and you've lost this series decidedly in 5-on-5 play. Decidedly. With a special teams goal, 6-1, right? 4 power play goals, 2 shorthanded goals to 1 power play goal. So you've lost 5-on-5 decidedly. You don't think they're in trouble?
They're definitely in trouble. But I've seen enough from this group this season to believe that they can find their way out of it. I did not see that from the group last season, that they could find their way back after things started to go sideways for them in the series against the Devils. There was no evidence last season that the Rangers could do that. I've seen it this season from this group. Just when I think that the Rangers are a team that, you know, are going to be down and they're going to be that team that, you know, hits the tailspin, they find a way back. They've done it all season. So that's what they're leaning on right now. However, I mean, listen, we talk about special teams and we talk about 5-on-5 play. I don't think the Rangers can be better than the Carolina Hurricanes at 5-on-5. I don't think they are a better team at 5-on-5. You got to be able to find a way to be even with them at 5-on-5 in the goal department because their special teams are better. The difference is in the last couple of games, Sean, is that their power play has not been good, right? I mean, their power play was 4 for 9 in the first 2 games. In the first game, it looked, I mean, they had 2 power plays that lasted 23 seconds total, and they scored on 2 shots. Then they were 2 for 7, you know, and a couple of those power plays in game 2 were very short, but they were 2 for 7 in game 2. But their power play now is succumbing to the pressure of the Carolina Hurricanes. The Hurricanes' aggressive forecheck is on the PK is hurting the Rangers. They're not able to set up. So they need to take some time and adjust that. They need to, yeah, there's adjustments to make it 5-on-5, but they can win this series in game 6 by scoring on the power play, which has been their bread and butter all season long. They need to find a way to adjust that. I think that is such an important part for this right now. Yes, 5-on-5, you can't just ignore it, of course. But I don't know that they can beat the Hurricanes in a 5-on-5 game. They can in a special teams game, but they have to get more from their power play.
Well, then they're in trouble. Go look at the box scores from the last 2 games. How many penalties were called?
Well, listen, look, the Rangers had only 1 power play opportunity. They only had 1 power play opportunity. I get that in game 3, but they had, what did they have, 3 or 4 in game 4? They had opportunities in game 4. They were 0 for 3 in game 4. They had the full 6 minutes, but they could not set up. They couldn't do anything. I mean, this team gets 4 power plays over 2 games. You figure they're going to score 1 goal on them, right? And if they score 1 goal, if that goal came in game 3, that goal came in game 4, series is over.
Yeah, I think that the 5-on-5 play is starting to, that's where series are decided in the playoffs, especially as you get on, right? Early on, the refs are trying to set a tempo. They're trying to tell you what's allowed and what's not allowed, you know, where it's going to be called, how it's going to be called. And then it settles in. And as you get deeper and deeper, they let the boys play more and more, and there's fewer and fewer penalties. And when that starts to happen, that's going to help Carolina. And for me, the biggest issue was Freddie Anderson, right? For Carolina, they went back to him after Kochetkov played in game 3. And I thought it was the wrong move. And he won game 4, and he looked not so great doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The goal against Lafreniere was a very bad goal to tie the game. But he looked good in game 5, and now he's got 2 days off. So I just think it's going to be a 5-on-5 series for the rest of the way, and that does not bode well for the New York Rangers.
Well, I don't know if Freddie Anderson looked good in game 5. I don't think he was tested in game 5. And that's the challenge for the Rangers, right? They've got to find ways to test him. But hey, listen, I mentioned it before. We talked to Mike Zeisberger, our colleague, our friend. So happy to have him back. He's out covering the Edmonton-Vancouver series. We touched on that. We touched a lot on the Toronto Maple Leafs, a little on the Dallas Stars, and more. Here's our interview with our good pal, Mike Zeisberger. Zeiss, a big welcome back. You've been doing this. You've been back on the road. You've been covering some playoffs. Man, it is good to see you, and please talk, so it's good to hear from you as well.
Well, thank you very much. It's very much get emotional with this stuff, but it's very it's great to be back. I can't talk enough about how the hockey world and my family at NHL.com rallied around me and gave me support. For people that don't know, I was sidelined with 3 different hospital stints with heart and kidney problems, and I've been overwhelmed and humbled. Coaches, GMs, players, friends, family, and my NHL.com colleagues. You are all my family. So it's great to be back, and enough mush. Let's start carving up some people.
Well, I don't know about carving up people, Mike, but we're over the moon that you're back. And I guess we start in Vancouver in Edmonton, right? That's where you are. They play tonight, so we're not going to delve into it too quickly, but a little bit of a goalie controversy there.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's really not too surprising, Sean, when you consider that Stuart Skinner in the first 3 games of this series, which the Canucks lead 2-1, has allowed 12 goals on 58 shots. So, Chris Knobloch, the Oilers coach, I mean, he's not the most emotional of guys when he's standing up in front of at the podium and things, but he's pretty matter of fact. And after game 3. He came out and said, look, we need more saves. Suddenly, Calvin Pickard will get the start tonight for game 4 against the Vancouver Canucks. They obviously have a lot of faith in him. And, it's going to be interesting because, he's going up against the King of Latvia in the other goal for the Vancouver Canucks. So it's going to be fascinating. I mean, it's really the first time since Chris Knobloch took over, early in the season where this is a big decision, and he'll be scrutinized one way or the other on the way that this ends up working out.
Zais, in the big pictures, because that's what we got to look at here, right? Goaltending in general, unless you have an Igor Shesterkin, right? Or if Vancouver had him, Thatcher Demko, healthy, it's, Jake Ottinger, I guess you could call it too. It's a wild card right now. And it's become a wild card in the league. So I don't think I'm surprised at all that we're seeing Calvin Pickard in this series. I'm not surprised that Seelovs has played the way he's played. It's just, the position itself has become a bit of a wild card. Do you see that? I mean, heck, you're in Toronto a lot. You know it, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, when you look at through the teams that are left, I mean, there were, after the first Colorado's first game against Winnipeg, where it was 7-6, there were people that thought that Georgiev was going to get the hook right away. So, when you start talking about Shesterkin and obviously Ottinger in Dallas, but after that, what's a sure thing with the teams that are left in the playoffs anymore? Maybe Swayman in Boston, but there's people there too that look and say, well, what about Allmark? So you're exactly right, Dan. And the fact that you mentioned the King of Latvia, as some people are calling him for the Canucks, but I mean, Vancouver now has they're only in the second round. They've gone through 3 goalies because Demko played before he got hurt, and then Casey DeSmith. So it just goes to show you, all 3 of us are aficionados of the National Football League, and we saw last season there was I think there was 50-something different quarterbacks who started games last year, and it shows you how vital it is to have a good backup. And I think the same thing is true with goaltending now. I mean, you can't point at one guy and just say, hey, we can ride him all the way. You can speak better than me to this, Dan, but look at, as much as we're raving about Shesterkin, there was a time this season where Jonathan Quick was playing at an elite level, and it just goes to show you that you need depth at that position more than you ever have.
Yeah, and look, it's the new NHL, and coaches need to figure it out. I talked to Patrick Waugh before or during the first round when they were playing Carolina. I can't name, and I followed the NHL for 30-something years, I can't name one of Patrick Waugh's backups for any of his Stanley Cup victories.
Right.
Whoever his coach was knew every day you're going to tap Patrick Waugh on the shoulder and you're going to say, go play. Jacques Lemire was going to tap Marty Brodeur on the shoulder, go play. Mike Keenan with Richter. That's not the life of a coach anymore. And it makes their lives much harder because they're not equipped to deal with goalies, right? That's why you need a good goalie coach.
Yep.
I can't count the number of times we've asked Rod Brindamore about his goaltending plans. They pretty much alternated going into the playoffs between Freddie Anderson and Peter Kochetkov. And then Anderson played the first 7 games of the playoffs. And then they finally went to Kochetkov, and then now they're back to Anderson, and he's won the last 2. But Rod doesn't know. He's like, oh, I'll go ask the goalies, and I'll ask the goalie coach, and we'll make a decision. But that's something 20 years ago you didn't have to do. And now you're going to get judged on it. And it's one more thing that a coach has to deal with that maybe they're not all that prepared to do. But it's the new NHL, because you need 2 or 3 number ones to get through a season with the way that the game is played now.
No, for sure. And, I just wanted to add, Sean, that I would be remiss. I left out Bobrovsky there. Bob's been playing great for Florida. So, but even with that, Shesterkin, Bobrovsky, Ottinger. So that's only 3 out of the 8 teams that are left where you can point at team's goaltending situation and saying, this is a guy and they're going to ride him until the tread wears off his tires. And for the other 5, you're not really surprised if for some reason or another, a backup goes in there.
All right, enough about goaltending. You wanted to carve some people up, so let's talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right. Listen,
I had
we
4
know
months to wait, Dan.
there's a lot to discuss here. Your knives are sharpened. So Sheldon Keefe is out. I don't think any of us are necessarily surprised at that, but you wrote the stories, guys, after Keefe was fired by the Leafs, that, he might take the hit, but it's got to be on these guys. And you've been on our podcast, beating the drum before, that it's on these guys, the players there, right? So let me ask you this. Do you think it's going to be the same group of players? Can it be the same group of players?
So here's where they're kind of stuck for one more season, is that, okay, you've just handed out long-term contracts to William Nylander and Austin Matthews in the last 12 months. So they're not going anywhere. John Tavares and Mitchell Marner have 1 year left on their contracts. Both have no movement clauses. Now, you can try to ask them to waive it. Number one, who's going to take John Tavares at this point in his career for $11 million? I can't see there being a lot of teams that are willing to absorb that. So then the spotlight comes on Mitch Marner. Here's the interesting thing about Marner. So Toronto kid, born and bred, loves playing for the Leafs, but, okay, and this is a big but, even if he was frustrated enough with, because he kind of has been made the scapegoat and he has not produced in the playoffs, but it goes beyond more than one guy. But even if he wanted to go, so you're Mitch Marner, you're going to be a UFA in 13 months. So when you go to the contract table, one of the big things agents do to point to teams is very simple. This is how many points my client has. Pay for those points. Where is he going to go in a trade where he's going to accrue more points in his walkaway year than on a power play with William Nylander and Austin Matthews? And it's not like, even if the Leafs wanted to move him, it's not like they're going to say, okay, we're going to bench you now because you said no to moving us. So to me, even if the end goal is, I need to get out of Toronto, I need to get the best contract that I can, to me, it still makes the most sense that he stays where he is, because that's where he's going to get the most points. So that's what I mean, where it's great to say you're going to break up the core 4, but realistically, how can you do that? So, for all the blah, blah, blah that you hear coming out of Toronto, I think that they are very handcuffed for at least the next 12 months. When that's over, they're going to have a lot of cap space and a lot of flexibility. And I think that's where they can make the biggest moves or change to their rosters. It's just that, are people going to have the patience to wait that out? Well, they might not have a choice.
Look, I understand money. I understand best contracts, but at some point you can't count your cash anymore. right? You can't buy a bigger house. So you take a little bit of a hit and you go someplace where you're not the fall boy anymore. You're not the scapegoat, right? I think some of it's been unfair, and clearly
Yeah.
it's weighed
Yeah.
on him. So, like, at what point does he maybe say, you know what, you guys want me out? See ya. You're going to get nothing on your investment because I'm in control and I'm going to tell you where I'm going to go. And every team that wants me knows that I'm in control. So they're not going to give you the assets that you want. You're going to get pennies on the dollar, but I'll see you later. Good luck with everything.
You know what, John, you know what, Sean, like hypothetically, you're not wrong, and logically, I mean, that's very sound logic. But knowing the way, Mitch is very influenced by his family, his father, Paul, and his agent. And I think that they would influence him to play hardball to finish out this season because it's the most that, and I agree. How big a house can you get? How many cars can you have? But I really do think that their influence might convince him to stay. It's gonna be interesting because how do you approach this topic? How do you go to him? And if you're the player, I mean, how do you translate it other than, hey, they don't want me anymore? And can you, to your point, in terms of mental health, can you put up with that for another 12, 13 months, another season, knowing that, you know what, the team doesn't want me and the city doesn't want me? And, I agree with you. It's a bit unfair. This kid does a lot off the ice. I think the shortcomings of this team of winning one playoff series in 20 years cuts far deeper than one guy. And I'll tell you what, guys, and I wrote this, the one thing that disturbed me more than anything in the exit meetings is that I saw guys, most of the guys said, we're close. What are you close to? To winning one round, to getting into the second round? And I asked this of Brendan Shanahan and Brad Treliving during their media availability last week. What are they close to? And if it is close to winning one round, I mean, what kind of culture is that? Are you not supposed to raise the bar a lot higher than just winning one round? So, and they talk about how close they all are. Well, that's all well and good. But you know what? You know what I don't see year after year in these exit meetings? I don't see anger. Okay. And I like when you talk about the great players in this league, look at Connor McDavid when things aren't going well. You look at him on the bench, he's angry. You guys remember a couple of years ago when Vegas eliminated Colorado, and Nathan McKinnon's sitting up there and goes, I've been in this league for 8 years and I haven't won squat. That's a type of anger. You know what? When you set your goals high, that I would like to see from players, and it's something that you never see from the Maple Leafs in their closeout, locker cleanouts. And believe me, I've seen this for like 7 or 8 years in a row, where there's been disappointment after losing in the first round, and it's the same thing all over again. And just once, I would like to see some players peeved off about it.
William Nylander was pretty angry.
I don't think I've ever seen him pretty angry. No, I mean, he's irked, but there's a difference between being irked and being angry. And you know what? Show it on the ice then. And I don't mean by fighting, but show it on the ice.
I don't know if it's in their personality. I don't know if it's in their DNA to have that. I just don't know, because you're right. We haven't seen it yet. But here's
Well, you know what, Dan? Well, you know what else hasn't been in their DNA? Winning playoff series.
you're right. Here's the thing with Marner, and I think it's I feel like I need to make this point. He's a really competitive guy too, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to be the guy who leaves Toronto, agrees to waive his no movement clause, and leaves, even if it's, as you said, Sean, penny on the dollars, which I get, even if it is for his mental health, which I get. He doesn't want to be the guy that leaves Toronto and then watches the Maple Leafs win, right? That would be the thing. So here's what I think he should do. Go play for the Leafs next year, but don't sign an extension. He doesn't have to. Play for the Leafs next year. Do your best. Try to win with the Toronto Maple Leafs. See where it goes. And then you know what? If you know they don't want you, go play your best for them and then leave them in the lurch with nothing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Right? Leave
And
as a
I
free
think
agent.
I think that's very much what could happen.
And if I'm Mitch Marner, that's how I'm thinking right now. I can't be the guy that leaves here and then they go win and I'm the problem. If right now I'm the problem that they got rid of and they could win without me. I think he's too proud for that. He's too competitive for that. So let's see. Listen, if you ask me, I think the Leafs have to do whatever they can to trade him, not necessarily because he's a problem, but because they need to break it up. And you're right. Trading Nylander was going to be a lot harder. Trading Matthews, I think, is never going to happen. So, and Tavares is almost impossible at this point. So, yeah, you're right, Zeiss. Marner's the guy. They should try to do it. It's a really tough situation. But if I'm Mitch Marner, I'm saying no. No shot. I'm going to play for you guys. We're going to go win. We are going to go win. And then I'm going to leave.
Well, and this is the other thing that I find kind of disturbing. So, and you know, credit to Brad Treliving for not, you know, sugarcoating it during his availability. But this is a team that is paying four guys. Okay, Marner, Nylander, Matthews, and Tavares, almost half the salary cap. What are they paying them to do? To score 13 out of the past 14 playoff games. They have scored 2 goals or less. That is heinous, okay? You're paying these guys to be difference makers, and they're not. And I understand Nylander was hurt, you know, had migraines at the beginning of the series against the Bruins, and Matthews was banged up. And I like them as people and I like them as players. But you know, other than Matthews had a hell of a game in game 2, scored the winning goal on a breakaway. But how many times in his 8-9 years in the National Hockey League can you point to a playoff game and go, Matthews was a difference maker, Nylander was a difference maker? And then you come out to Edmonton and watch Draisaitl and McDavid on nightly basis. Well, who's leading the playoffs in scoring right now? Draisaitl 1, McDavid 2. You watch Nathan McKinnon, even though the Colorado Avalanche are struggling right now, but every time he's on the ice, he looks like a difference maker. And the bottom line is the Toronto Maple Leafs difference makers haven't been in the playoffs.
But what is Draisaitl and McDavid done for the Edmonton Oilers? What have they done? What have they won?
More playoff series than the Leafs.
Is that how we're figuring it out now?
Yeah.
Oh, well, if we're just figuring out who's the better loser, then that's cool.
Well, actually, Sean, I think you bring up a good point. And Zeiss, last one on the Leafs for me on this is this goes deeper, and you've mentioned this, right? I mean, this goes deep. Yes, it's the core guys that have not produced, you know, in the playoffs, done what they're paid to do, which is score. But this goes deeper. Doesn't this go to defense? Doesn't this go to goaltending? Doesn't this go to the culture, if you will? Like, this is not just a team that needs to figure out how to score, how to get their top guys to score in the playoffs. I was impressed with their comeback in the series. I thought that they did well, right? But there's something clearly missing, and maybe it is that scoring, but doesn't it go beyond that for these guys? And it's the same thing in Edmonton. You got McDavid and Draisaitl. They are producing, but it goes beyond that in Edmonton too. It's the same type of situation. Do you agree?
Kind of. I think the Oilers are a step above the Leafs, right? But you make an interesting point in terms of Toronto. I think a lot of it has to do with structure, in that you cannot build a team in the salary cap era where 4 forwards, I'm not saying 4 players, 4 forwards take half of your salary cap. I don't see that working. Other general managers have told me that. You need that stud defenseman, which they don't have. You know, you look at some of the other teams, okay? Quinn Hughes, Makar, right? Adam Fox with the Rangers, like these teams have those guys on the back end. And Toronto's been looking for that since what, Boreas Holming? So, I mean, you know, it's not constructed the right way. And I think until those 4 contracts, until you can move 1 or 2 of them, there's not a hell of a lot you can do to change that structure.
Well, look, the biggest problem is there's no help, right? When you get to the playoffs, unless you're a super freak like McDavid or Draisaitl, you need help, and they need help, and that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons they're down 2-1. But you're playing another good team, and you're playing another team with some good defensemen and really good goalies, and they're going to mark your top guys out. When you get into really good playoffs, it's the third and fourth lines that are deciding games. Look at the series that Dan and I are covering. Kuznetsov has huge goals. Stahl has a huge goal last night. Like, their top line's delivering, but it's not just them, right? And the same thing for the Rangers when you see some of the goals that they're scoring, and the teams that are in trouble aren't really getting that. So, like, you could blame those 4 all you want, but at some point, there's 8 other forwards on that roster. Like, at some point, you need to construct 4 forward lines that can contribute in some way, because when you get to the playoffs, you cannot count on your top guys carrying you.
No, I mean, and you have a really good point, and that's why I think that, you know, when I look at the one team I look at in these playoffs is the Dallas Stars, how deep they are, whether you go, you know, 12 forwards deep or 6 defense deep, you know, and I think that's a reason, a big reason for their success. But, you know, Sean, I still go back to, that's all well and good, but if you have that cachet of goal scorers and you, again, 13 of 14 games, 2 or less, that shows me that your difference makers are not being your difference makers. And that's, to me, look at, I mean, and I just want to say thanks a lot for having me on, guys. This has been a blast, but I will end it with this. If you put the rosters before the first round of the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs next to each other and said which roster has the most talent, I would suggest that most people would have said the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the best center that the Boston Bruins had was in the stands waving a Bruins flag, and that was Patrice Bergeron. They keep losing players. They keep finding ways to win. At some point, your talent has to be the talent.
You got it, Zeiss. And this was great. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you back. Go do some work.
Love you guys, and I can't say enough how much your support meant to me. And I look forward to coming back and sharpening my knife some more. So thank you very much.
Sean, first off, obviously great to have Zeiss back. Secondly, love hearing his take on the Maple Leafs. I really, that was a good discussion that we just had on the Maple Leafs, but they also have to hire a coach, which we don't really bring up with Zeiss. You know, the coaching situation there. Obviously, Sheldon Keefe, we know, is out. And there's been a lot of talk about Craig Berube and potentially him being the guy that goes in there. They need a coach like that, you know, and a coach that's going to have to go in there, for lack of a better term, with the ego to say, I can do this. I'm going to get this done. And Berube might have, I mean, a guy who's won before should have that, right? A guy who's won before should have the ego and the confidence to say, it's me now. It's my turn. I'm going to get this done. So whoever that is, that's going to be an important part of this for the coach to go in there and say, Toronto, you got the right guy. It's me, and we're winning with me.
There's a lot of guys that have gone through that town that said, I'm the guy. And they rode out on their horses with their hats over their faces.
Yes, they have.
So I don't know. I just find it shocking. You know, what are we in the 10th year now of the Shanna plan, right? Like, and a lot of that was done under Kyle Dubas, and this team is, you know, and Mike got into this a little bit, so poorly constructed. Like, you look at the Dallas Stars. When did they lose? Like, when were they a bad team? because that's always the argument, right? Oh, well, Toronto, they're good enough every year to make the playoffs, so they don't get to restock and retool. They're always in that mushy middle. Who's lived in the mushy middle more than the Dallas Stars? Look at the hits they've had with their picks, right? Wyatt Johnson, Stankoven, Harley on defense. That's what you need. Like when you have that much money tied up in people, you need really good players on really cheap contracts. And that's what the Dallas Stars have. And that's why they're so competitive, even though they've been competitive for every year. So, you know, you can blame the players and their attitude and their confidence and whatever else you want to blame, but at some point management has to give you the tools to win with. And they have not been provided. They won't be provided, especially until there's a goaltender that you look at and say, I believe in that guy. He's my guy. I think we're going to win with him. Who's the last goalie in Toronto where you looked at him and said, we win? We win the goaltending in this series.
You mentioned the Dallas Stars. Listen, Jim Nill just won the Jim Gregory General Manager of the Year award last year. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Nill wins the Jim Gregory Award again, because he has done a terrific job. And by the way, the awards are going to be, there's a show in Las Vegas on June 27th, but the NHL awards are going to start. Some of the other ones are going to be announced starting tonight, actually, with the Mark Messier Leadership Award. You're going to have the Masterton, the Selke, the Adams, and a few others that'll be coming in before the award show. It actually starts tonight with the Mark Messier Leadership Award. But to go back to that point, Sean, Jim Nill has done a terrific job as a general manager there, building a team that didn't have to lose. But the Toronto Maple Leafs, clearly, as we've discussed, are not very well constructed. That doesn't mean they can't win. That's the thing. It doesn't mean they can't win. They have talent. They do. I mean, I think we saw in that series against Boston the talent on display at times. I think we saw in that series against Boston the depth on display at times. We saw a team that fought back. Like, there's things that you can pick out of that. It's not all doom and gloom. There are things you can pick out of that. Now, why did they get into the position where they had to fight back? That's what has to be analyzed the correct way. That's where the roster construction needs to be a little bit better. And that's where the coaching has to come into play as well. And it's going to be interesting to see where they go with the coach. Like I said, a lot of talk on Craig Berube, but it's not foregone. It's not like they're not done. You know what I mean? Like, they're not done. They're not dead. They're not a team that needs to blow it all up. And here we go. There's a lot there to work with. You just got to find a way to put it all together. And they can, I mean, they've got other talent. They've got young talent that's come. Matthew Knies is a great example. He's a good young player, right? Wyatt Johnston's a really good young player in Dallas. Matthew Knies is a really good young player in Toronto. It can be done. But Sheldon Keefe wasn't able to put it together. Now it's on another guy. And if the next guy can't do it, well, maybe at that point it will get blown up.
Well, I know at the end of the series, Dan, that you were ready to heap high praise on the Toronto Maple Leafs for the grit and character that they showed. And I hope they got the respect in the handshake line that they deserved and that you wanted to give them for trying.
You're dripping with sarcasm. It's just falling off of you. The sarcasm.
Me?
Yes.
Well, no, I mean, you made a very passionate point after Game 7 that this is a team that tried, and we're giving out achievement awards now, participation awards.
I don't even know where to go with that. We're not giving out achievement awards or participation awards. I'm telling you that it's a different animal than a team that we have to be looking at and say, oh, you got to blow it up. I do think that they need to change a piece out of that core. I don't know if it's going to be able to happen, but I do think change has to happen. You can't just keep running it back the same way and expect a better result, right? So they make the coaching change, and I think they need to make some roster construction, a reconstruction, if you will. But there's still enough there to believe that they can get back next year and they can be better next year. There is. Now, also part of that falls on goaltending. Who's going to be the goalie? There's a lot of questions, Sean, but they're not a team that we're looking at and going, they're done. Forget about it. Blow the whole thing up.
So just the last point on this, and then we'll move on to other things. Right now, you're willing to lay a pint on the fact that you believe that the Toronto Maple Leafs will be one of the top 4 teams in the league in the playoffs?
In the playoffs next year?
Yeah.
I can't say that now.
No,
What are
of
they going
course
to look
you
like?
can't.
Who's going
Well,
to be the
of course-
coach?
Of course you can't say it because there's no reason to say it. We don't know a lot of things about a lot of other teams, but I would be willing to bet on quite a few teams that I believe they would be in the top 4. And we would get down to 9 or 10 in the East before I said, oh, I think that Toronto team's better.
In the East?
Yeah.
In the East.
Yeah.
You're at 9 or 10 teams in the Eastern Conference that has 16 teams that you think is better right now
No,
than
that
the
I
Toronto
think
Maple Leafs.
that I think we'll get further in the playoffs.
Well, you can't have that many teams that can get further in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Only 8 will make it.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
So are you saying they're not a playoff team next year?
No, I'm saying that if I had to bet on who was going further in the playoffs, I would bet on at least 7, if not 8 Eastern Conference teams before I would bet on the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have not shown anything in 9 years. They've won 1 round.
You know what? The Washington Capitals were the same way, weren't they? Then they won the Stanley Cup. They got the right coach who put in the right system, and he got the most out of him. He got guys to buy into a different way of playing, and they went and won the Stanley Cup. Why can't that happen in Toronto? I'm not saying they're going to win the Stanley Cup next year, but why can't that happen in Toronto? If they get the right coach and the right guy in to run the right system, get the most out of the guys, get them to buy in, play 200 feet, do all those things, build your depth, rely on your depth, have your depth be a huge part of it. Well, why can't that be the Toronto Maple Leafs?
It can, Dan. They showed this year in coming back that they have the mental fortitude to go deep in the playoffs. You're 100% right.
Really, I can't wait to see you in Raleigh, Sean.
You are 100% right. I mean, they have that it thing. They have the it.
All right. Maybe they do. We're going to find out next year. We're going to find out who the coach is. There's still a lot, but hey, we got a lot of playoffs going on, and you and I are going to be in Raleigh for Game 6. It's going to be a fun one. The noose is getting tighter, as you said, on the New York Rangers. The Hurricanes are feeling it. Let's see where that goes. Can the Avalanche come back? You got Vancouver and Edmonton, Boston and Florida. Lots going on, Sean. We're going to do it again next week.
I can't wait, and I can't wait to see you in Raleigh tomorrow. Maybe we'll have some more barbecue.
That would be the thing to do. Not a maybe. It's a must. We have to do that. So you know what I'm going to say? Enjoy the barbecue and enjoy the hockey.